Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I know people are still joining, and to everyone watching the recording, thank you very much, and welcome to Stewarts Soundbites. This is well, it's not really a Christmas episode, but we're near Christmas, so we're calling it a Christmas episode. Um, and it's we're really lucky today because we've got Colette Shaw, who's the founder of Steps Prosthetics and a prosthetist, and we're talking today about kind of developments in upper limb technology. And we decided, we were kind of chatting about, what would be kind of a good topic. And we landed on this kind of upper limb rehab and the kind of the advancements in that area, I suppose, because it's not as visible as the how things are developing and what's needed and what's going on in the upper limb world's totally different and separate from the lower limb because it's a bit more kind of prevalent. So we're really lucky to have Colette with us today. We've only got 15 minutes, so we're gonna jump right in. And Colette, I wanted just to touch upon to start us off. I wanted to talk about the technology for upper limbs and the whole reason that we decided that we'd talk about this, which is,
Mhm.
why has the upper limb technology been slower to develop than the lower limbs?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's two main reasons for that, really. I mean, firstly, there's just far fewer upper limb amputees out there. They only account for around 10% of all amputees. So in the UK, that's about 500 new amputees every year. And only around 300 of those will have lost their hand and the wrist, with another, maybe including 100 that will also have lost their elbow or the shoulder. So the numbers are really quite small compared to the lower limb population. And I think quite understandably, the product manufacturers tend to focus more on the lower limb prosthetics because that's where the volume is.
Yeah.
But secondly, I think the human arm, if you think about it, is just incredibly complex and arguably much more difficult technically to replicate than lower limbs, which tend to function more passively. So, I mean, our arms are just amazingly sophisticated and articulate. You use your hands to perform tasks, but we also use them to interact with the world when we talk or when we greet people,
Yeah.
when we gesture, and even when we care for people, and the complex movements that they can perform simultaneously. So if you think just about reaching out to pick up an object, you can move your shoulder, elbow, wrist, and hand all at the same time, which is really complicated to try and replicate prosthetically. And there's also that rich sensory feedback that we get for our arms. So we know where our arm is in space without looking. We can do things without looking at our hand, but we can also tell if an object is hard or soft, or if it's cold or hot. So you know to pick up something firmly, or if you need to be gentle with it, like an egg or your child's hand, for example.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really challenging for the manufacturers to replace that function, because not only do they need to create the sophisticated joints, but they also need to create the control system so that the user can actually, send the messages to the arm to make it
Yeah.
function.
Yeah. So it's
So
necessarily being slower as well in that way.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And is there, because you mentioned that obviously you've got fingers and hands and wrists and elbows and all of those different kind of functions
Yeah.
at the same time. Is there a difference in the quality of the prosthesis available depending upon the level of the amputation?
Yeah, I think generally speaking that there's good powered prosthetic components available for most levels of arm amputation, but there's different challenges with the different levels really, and that generally gets more complex with the higher level of amputation. So, for example, an above elbow amputee has lost their elbow, wrist, and hand, but they've also lost lots more of the musculature. So there's less muscles left in their residual limb to control the increased number of joints.
Yeah.
But then at the opposite end of the spectrum, for somebody that's just lost part of their hand, we don't really have enough space to fit in a new hand and the control software and the power system. So
Yeah.
it creates a bit of a different challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Oh my, there's so much to think about. It's kind of mind blowing. And so what's it, will you just, do you mind, Colette, just talking us through kind of what's available now,
Yeah.
in terms of upper limb replacements and kind of outline where there's room for improvement?
Absolutely. I mean, there's there's certainly been significant advances in powered prosthetic components. Certainly we've seen a lot in the last 10 to 15 years, initially with much more sophisticated prosthetic hands and control systems, but also using osseointegration to directly connect the prosthesis to the body. Traditionally, prosthetic hands that were available since the 70s, and we still see them being used today, only had a single motor, so they could only create this sort of pinch grasp, which is quite difficult if you want to pick up a cup or something that you want to conform, like your partner's hand, for example.
Yeah.
Whereas hands today have individual motors in each of the fingers, so they can create lots of different grip patterns, so that users can grasp and manipulate a much wider range of objects, or even a finger point to type on a keyboard. But we've also seen advances in the control system, moving away from the more traditional couple of surface electrodes, so one in each of the main muscle groups, measuring the strength of the muscle signal and then using that to control the hands. But really that only provides two inputs to open or close, a hand. And if you want to introduce more joints, then you need a strategy to switch between the joints. So you might get the user to sort of co-contract both muscles to switch between the hand and then being able to rotate the wrist. But that system really it's not very efficient or effective when you think about controlling a bionic limb with multiple joints. So a more advanced control system called pattern recognition is thankfully now available, which effectively uses more sensors. So it has up to 8 positions all the way around the remaining muscles in the residual limb. And it's collecting more information. So it's looking for the pattern of muscle activity rather than just looking for the strongest signal. And then it uses machine learning algorithms to learn those patterns and decode them to be able to control the prosthesis, which effectively means it's a faster and much more intuitive control for the user without needing to switch. It's a bit like introducing an automatic transition for the car, where you can just focus on driving without having to stop and without having to continually change gears. I think in particular as well, we've also seen improved surgical techniques with the use of targeted muscle reinnervation, where surgeons are effectively rewiring the neuromuscular system to take the nerves that would have gone to the muscles that are no longer there and reinnervating some of the other muscles within the residual limb, so you can effectively get more signals. Because again, going back to how complex the arm is, we need more signals from the body to be able to control the prosthesis.
I mean, it's crazy complex, and it's all really simple that we think of as kind of really simple functionality that you take for granted every day, like putting your coat on or
it's things that you take for granted, but even for an amputee to just pull up a zip is really quite a difficult task to do. They're just incredibly articulate.
And obviously I exist in a world of kind of litigation where we're making provision for people who've sustained injury, and I you could it's well known, I suppose, that there are kind of discrepancies between what's available in the NHS and what's available privately. Is that true for the upper limb technology as well?
Yeah, I think there's certainly a difference between which products are available in the NHS and privately. But earlier this year, the NHS England did release additional funding for multi-grip hands, similar to the microprocessor knee funding that was released a few years ago. However, they do tend to still rely on the old traditional control system. So I don't think there's funding available for the pattern recognition system. But it is still significantly better than the basic single motor hands that were previously available.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's reassuring, isn't it?
Yeah. I think the other thing that's difficult for the NHS to provide just is the amount of time to spend with the patient. And because these products are incredibly complex, it takes a long time for users to train and practice and become proficient. And if they don't have that input to actually make the hands useful in everyday life, then they might stop wearing them because it's quicker for them to do things one-handed than two-handed. But
Yeah.
then there's the risk of, the long term effects of that, the long term degeneration of the single limb, and then just greater dependence on other people to support them in day to day life. So I think that's
Yeah.
not just the product, but also the amount of time and input clinically that upper limb amputees need.
Yeah. And do people tend to then start with like a this is probably a really stupid question. Sorry, showing my ignorance, but do people tend to start with kind of a basic model and graduate through more sophisticated, or would you do it the other way around, or do you just kind of assess the need at the time and someone like you kind of knows what the
Yeah, it's really about assessing their needs and what they want to achieve in life, and assessing whether there's any usable, muscles
yeah,
signals in their residual limb.
yeah,
And are they happy to wear something that's powered? There's a whole psychological acceptance to it. Some patients just want to replace the appearance of it. That they just want something that looks cosmetic.
yeah.
Um, Whereas others are quite happy to wear something that looks bionic and looks robotic. So it's really about just getting to know your patient and getting to know what their needs are, and what their what fits their lifestyle.
So do the more kind of highly functioning arms tend to be more bionic looking? Is there a need for those two, the cosmetic and the function to
Yeah,
kind of?
yeah, and that yes, absolutely, and that is a bit of a challenge just now. I mean, prosthetics, there's always a compromise between function and cosmesis, both in upper
Yeah,
limb and lower limb. It's
yeah,
difficult to get something that functions well and looks natural.
yeah,
And the manufacturers of the hand do try and make gloves that go over the top to make them look a bit more realistic. But there's only one of these multi grip hands available, where they'll actually put a lifelike cover over the
yeah,
top and do all the colour matching to match the sound side. But then it
yeah,
does affect the function of the hand. It does slow it down.
yeah,
So the function is not so good. But that's unfortunately a compromise that we face
yeah,
daily.
yeah, for sure. So what I wanted to kind of peek behind the curtain, if you like, a little bit, and just to ask you a bit about kind of what the most significant advancements are in upper limb technology that are being worked on kind of right
Uh-huh.
now, and
Yeah.
when can we expect to see them?
Yeah, well, that's a bit of an unknown, really, but
Yeah,
I mean, it's really exciting to see what's coming around the corner, and there is a lot of research hubs around the world that are, taking things to the next level, and really around, because the components are really quite good just now, but it's more about improving the neuromuscular connection between the patient and the prosthesis, or the man
yeah,
and the machine, if you like.
yeah,
And we are seeing research teams developing this through a combination of the TMR surgery, and actually implanting electrodes into muscles rather than using electrodes that sit on top of the skin,
yeah,
um, osseointegration, and actually starting to combine some sensory feedback so that the user can get some feedback from the arm without relying on looking at it, which would be a huge advancement. Difficult to say when we'll see them commercially available, but I'd like to think, given where things are in the research world, that we'd be able to see them clinically within the next 5 to 10 years.
and do you think in the UK?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good. Well, maybe whenever we have the next big thing, well, you can come back and tell us about it and
Absolutely. I'll come back and tell you all about
demos.
it.
Yeah.
Love to.
Um, so where can we keep track of this stuff, Colette? So for case managers and rehab professionals and people who are interested, where can we find more information and kind of track the development of these kind of evolving technologies?
Yeah, I think nowadays social media, to be honest, is as good a place as any to keep track
Yeah,
of the emerging technologies, and following the leading research labs that focus on bionic limbs,
yeah,
and also following the major product manufacturers to see, when products become commercially available.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's embarrassing, but honestly, about 99% of my news comes from Twitter. It's not terrible.
Yeah, it's true. It's the way of the world, isn't it? But it can be
No.
incredibly useful.
Yeah, or X or whatever it's called now. I don't know if you're allowed to call
Oh
it
yeah,
Twitter.
that's
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, we've finished, Colin. We've run out of time already.
wow, that was quick.
I know it goes fast, but thank you ever so much, Colette, for today and for having such a great topic prepared, and lots of people can go away and have a think about it and have a bit of a social media stalk, and think about their own caseload and whether any of this is helpful to them. So I'm
Yeah,
really grateful for you, Colette. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Thank you very much for having me, and good luck
No,
with
it's
your
my
Christmas
pleasure.
shopping.
Oh yeah, everyone, good luck with your Christmas shopping. Do some last minute panic buying like us to make us feel better. And have a wonderful Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year. Thank you.
Thanks then. Bye bye.
Bye.